All right, all right. So thank you everybody for joining us on this wonderful Monday evening. Of course, we have one of our patented 4-hour roundtables lined up for you guys. So we do have a lot of guests this evening. And of course, before we start, let me just thank everybody for stopping by, watching the show, everybody that comments. You guys are the lifeblood of what we do here, and we appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to join us, okay? As always, man, grateful for all the gratitude in the world. So let's get started. Let me just go ahead and put out there, guys. If this is your first time watching us, do us a favor. You can check us out on a YouTube channel, and that's at www.youtube.com/made from scratch broadcast. Do us a favor, hit the like and subscribe button. We are always trying to build our viewership there. Thank you so much. If you're watching on YouTube, guys, hit the notification bell as well. It'll let you know whenever we do schedule new lives, whenever we are live, and whenever we drop new content on the channel. So thank you so much if you're watching us on YouTube. And of course, you can check us out on all our other social media platforms, guys. We are streaming live right now on Instagram. We are streaming live on, well, Instagram, separate little thing, but we are streaming live there. We're streaming live on Facebook. You can check us out on our Facebook page at Made from Scratch, at MFSB Live, excuse me, we changed that over. And of course, we're streaming live on Twitch and on Twitter. You can check us out both there at MFSB Live, and we're streaming live this evening on LinkedIn. So thank you so much, guys. If you're watching us on all our social media platforms, please drop it down in the comments. Do appreciate it very much, guys. You guys rock. So let's get this show rocking and rolling. So let me bring in this evening's my co-host for the evening. He is my friend, and among other things, is a dreamer, thinker, doer, and entrepreneur. Please welcome to the show my co-host, Michael Padurano. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm having a very interesting day. It's yes, it's been entertaining today, but it's going well, and it's about to get better. So that's awesome.
That is, brother. So let's get started. Of course, introducing some of our guests for the evenings. Next up is Reena Friedman Watts. Her compelling story has taken her from the Jerry Springer Show to the legal drama of Court TV. In her new podcast, Better Call Daddy, she interviews people whose stories haven't been told yet, and they get her daddy's perspective afterwards. Please welcome to the show, guys, Reena Friedman Watts.
Hey.
How are you doing, Reena? Awesome. We're doing awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. So we're going to have a good conversation. Now let's welcome our next guest. His name is Christopher Lafayette. He's a technologicalist, international speaker, thought leader, and eco-bionic diversity and inclusion advocate. He currently advises corporations and startups about diverse culture and technology. Please welcome to the show, guys, Christopher Lafayette. How you doing, Christopher?
Hey, Gabriel, how's it going?
It's going good, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us, man. Appreciate you stopping by. All right, and for our next guest, guys, his name is JaMarr Johnson. He's an entrepreneur, author, speaker, and after a 14-year military career in both the Marine Corps and the Navy, he decided to dedicate his life to business and uplifting others. He sits on the board of Dream Builders Foundation and is active in the Covenant House of Los Angeles, which is dedicated to helping at-risk homeless teenagers. Please welcome to the show this evening, JaMarr Johnson. How you doing, JaMarr?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
No problem, my friend. No problem. Appreciate you so much. And then, guys, let me help welcoming our next guest to this show. Excuse me, guys. I had something in my throat and I couldn't get it out. So let's welcome our next guest. Her name is Kaitlyn Dundorf. She has been a guest on the show already once. She was a guest on Tea with Gary Vee, is a student and creator who is building a virtual community of empowerment, love, and purpose-driven living and leadership. Please welcome to the show, guys, Kaitlyn Dundorf. How you doing, Kaitlyn?
I'm fabulous. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. So, guys, my next guest, his name is Earl Gibson III, a.k.a. the Black Lion. He is a real estate investor in San Antonio, Texas, a fellow Texan. Awesome. A LinkedIn influencer who is outspoken about hot topics and current events. Earl is a USFA veteran who provides his own opinions on race, Black Life Matters, police, and education. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Earl Gibson III. How you doing, Earl?
Hey, how's it going? Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you perfectly fine, sir. Thank you so much.
Man, JaMarr's here.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
What's up, brother?
All right, and then let me get to you guys. Her name is Dee Adeyemo. She is a recent executive MBA, an executive at a Fortune 100 company, a 17-year veteran in corporate America with a fierce passion for improving race relations, creating equity, and driving inclusion, as well as her two beautiful sons. Please welcome to the show, Dee Adeyemo. How you doing, Dee? Can you hear us, Dee?
Thanks. How are you?
Good. And guys, also welcome to the show.
I can hear you.
Awesome. Okay, welcome to the show again. Our next guest, his name is Omar Sims, is a creative, innovative, and detail-oriented IT professional, gifted educator, and motivated leader. He fosters a multinational, international, cross-culture, and forward-thinking movement in academics, sports, and humanities. He's coming to us from the Republic of Georgia tonight, guys. So please welcome Omar Sims to the show. Thank you so much, Omar, for taking the time and joining us. How are you doing this evening, sir? Can you hear us, Omar? Okay.
The Republic of Georgia didn't pay their internet bill.
Thank you.
How are you doing there, Omar?
For the video.
Okay, it's probably
we got it covered.
There we go. I
know.
Okay, so guys, thank you every single one of you guys for taking the time out of your evening. Yes, we got you, buddy. So thank you guys again, all of you, for joining this evening in this important conversation. So, Mr. Padurano, you want to take it away, my friend?
Sure. I'd like to start tonight, and there's a specific reason I want to ask this question, and there's a specific reason I want to ask Earl this question. So we're going to start off with Earl, and the question is, how is social media impacting the cause for anti-racism, and how is it affecting the storylines?
I think it's distorting everything. I think that people are comfortable saying things via social media that they wouldn't say to somebody's face, so I don't think it's authentic. I think the people who hide behind the guise of social media posts and things like that, I think it's fake. All this, I think a lot of this, I think people are taking advantage of emotions. I think they're pimping out the emotions of Black people right now. And they do it every 4 years.
Okay. With that being said, what is your current experience that you're going through? Because I really want people to understand what you're going through right now.
Yeah, for me, I mean, a lot of people challenge my validity, especially on LinkedIn, because I don't agree with any of the narratives that are pushed out there with Black Lives Matter and all that other stuff. That they're pandering. I don't believe in any of that. I believe that there's no shortcut to hard work. I think anybody who works hard can get whatever they want, especially in America. And it's been proven time and time again, no matter what situation you're in or where you came from, if you work hard, you can have whatever you want to. But because I say things like that, people challenge my validity. They don't think I'm a real person. They think I'm a troll or whatever. They think I'm white, all kinds of things. They call me all kinds of racist names, but it is what it is. It doesn't change the truth.
And what are they currently doing to you because of that?
Well, recently they tried to censor me on LinkedIn itself. They had restricted my profile because I shared a video of a shooting in Chicago and I went straight at Black Lives Matter. They're saying all this stuff about they care about Black lives, but in Chicago, the shooting has increased 139%. So I showed a video of a mother getting gunned down with her child in her arms.
Yeah, I saw that.
Because of that, they decided they would censor me on LinkedIn because it doesn't go into the narrative.
Or audio.
Okay. And what do you feel? Where do you feel that the change needs to happen?
We need to get rid of Black Lives Matter. It's not for Black people. That's not our movement.
Okay.
Period.
All right. JaMarr, do you want to run with that question as well?
Just repeat the question. Repeat the question.
As far as how is social media impacting the cause and impacting what's currently going on in the narratives?
When you say the cause, I think it's really important to be specific about which cause, right? Because there are a lot of causes happening at one time. To me, one of the biggest causes, even beyond the Black Lives Matter cause, is the human trafficking that is occurring all around this country. There are thousands of Black children, white children, minority children that are disappearing and going into, the human trafficking process. On the board of the Dream Builders Project, shout out to Mayor DeHaan, who founded this nonprofit 6 years ago. We've actually sat in on and done stings here in Los Angeles. So when I look at Black Lives Matter, which is just to keep it somewhat on topic from what Earl was talking about, if you look at it, it almost feels as if it is a pyramid scheme of sorts. When you look at the millions of dollars that this nonprofit or this entity is raising, and you look at where it disseminates and where it goes, it actually isn't going into anything that directly affects Black lives. It's going into the political sphere to facilitate an agenda. So as a Black person who served in the military for 14 years, who grew up in the inner city, who grew up seeing these real Black issues, there is no way that defunding the police should be even an option. I have a brother who's a detective in New York City who worked undercover for 8 years, and he's a 6'4", dark African-American man. How was he able to work undercover, right? Because all of the crime in New York City was mostly being done by people who looked like him. So he was able to blend in there, right? So imagine if you were leaving it up to white people to police that situation, it would never have gotten policed. And the hundreds of people that he was able to put in prison for their actions destroying their own communities would have never have taken place. So when I look at social media has the ability to amplify incorrect narratives and messages. There are people now on certain social media platforms like Facebook, for example, or Instagram, where they'll tell you that this has been fact-checked and deemed incorrect, right? And then they'll kind of alter it so you can't see it, but you have to click on it knowing that someone has fact-checked it, right? And then when you go look at it and you go research it and do a little bit of digging on your own, you determine that actually it's more factual than not, because all it is the actual video of for example, the shooting that took place in Chicago. But they're censoring information and they're trying to control the narrative. And we know that this has taken place before, because even going into when Trump got elected, there's a whole documentary on Netflix that talked about the great hack, in which there are companies that control the digital narrative and what people see. Even LinkedIn, for example, they control which posts get boosted. There's no rhyme or reason. No one knows the algorithms behind some of these posts and why they go viral. But they're pushing narratives and trying to control people's emotions, because if you can control their emotions, you can get them to do things. You can get them to buy things, right? I work in marketing. You can get people to buy things. You can get people to donate to certain things, and completely ignore actual things that work to keep people safe, to keep people prospering. And honestly, I think that the Black Lives Matter movement, while I understand the intention, I think when you look at the creators, they all agree that they are of Marxist beliefs. And if you ask most Americans, do they want to live in a Marxist country, i.e. a communist country, they would say no. Yet, if we're pushing Black Lives Matter to the forefront, we're pushing forth those ideologies almost like in a Trojan horse fashion. And I don't get down with that.
Thank you, JaMarr. If you're not speaking, can everybody just put it on mute just so that the background noise is a little bit quieter for everybody? There's sometimes feedback, and it'll just minimize that.
Absolutely.
Christopher, do you want to run with this next, as far as your opinion and how social media is impacting these messaging and, I guess, multiple causes at the same time?
When you say these messages and multiple causes, which do you mean by these, and which multiple causes are you specifically referring to, so I can better appreciate the gravity of your question, Mike?
Well, I would start with racism and anti-racism and the supporting equality across races is inequality for all people, right? And bringing the quality to a point of pure equality and inclusion and diversity and all that other stuff, right? This is where your pure this is where your base is, right? This is your pure beliefs. And I want to get your opinion on how that's impacting. How do you feel social media is impacting it one way or the other?
How do I feel that social media is impacting the narrative of equality and systemic racism?
Yes.
I think it's sizable. I think if we look at under the banner of technology and we look at the most progressive, developed type of technology that we've created thus far is communication. We find ourselves in this pre-COVID or current COVID situation that we find ourselves in, subject to using communication tools that have exceeded exponentially and have scaled exponentially. You know, when you take a platform such as Zoom or StreamYard, it goes from somewhat 10 million users a day to 400 million users. Then yeah, sure, communication is taking this place, whether it's Messenger, Zoom, Blue Jeans, Hangouts, so forth and so on, and virtual discussions and narratives. I think in terms of social media, it is amplifying voices. I think there is this overwhelming evidence when it comes to these social platforms and implicit, explicit biases and their development and their makeup algorithmically, I think, as it's been expressed. I think when you start to look at the implicit and explicit compounds that are created to make up these algorithms, it is subjective. And so when you start to look at the messaging getting across from one platform to the other, I think there is a lot of limitations, but at the same time, we all knew what we signed up for the day that we signed in. So when we talk about actually using these platforms, to your point, and more to your point, Mike, is it helping? Sure. I mean, obviously it is. I mean, we wouldn't be on this conference call had it been for social media and us to have a way to express, communicate. Now, if we have to go more over to the point, is it effective? What's it actually doing in terms of generating substantive change? I think we have to look, each person has to look in their own hearts and minds. I'm not one to necessarily address the differences and things of people that I don't like and the things of organizations that I don't like. If I spent my time addressing organizations that I don't like, that would be a conversation in perpetuity, right? And I'd be going ad infinitum having these discussions about the things that I don't like. So I think it's far more important and pertinent to spend more time addressing what's happening in this house and in this vessel. And instead of me taking all the time to trying to change the hearts and minds of everyone else, I think it's far better to invest in changing the hearts and minds and turning my eyes inwards and looking what I can do here first and looking at what's happening inside this house than spending my time trying to change narratives that weren't meant to be changed in the first place. Because whether it's Black Lives Matter, KKK, or whatever you will think it is, Blue Lives, everyone has a role to play and they must be allowed to play them. And I have a good regard for that. So let them play their role. And then I think it's just far better for us to play our role and to get in where you fit in. And let me say this too, because I really appreciated something that Earl said when it comes to hard work. You know, I'd rather spend time in developing and building than asking. I'm here in Silicon Valley. I came to Silicon Valley with black colored skin. I'm not asking Silicon Valley for a handout. I'm extending a hand to help it. You know, because when we look on the subject of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, I think we're in a unique position in a situation contemporary times and not to be subjected to the conditions of our predecessors when they didn't have the tools and the unique tools that we have available to be able to build and be able to enjoy the autonomy that many of us enjoy today. So I think I'd rather create the infrastructure to talk about the things that other people aren't doing for me. I'd rather build it.
Thank you, Christopher. I appreciate it. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for your opinion because I've known you for a while and I just have a lot of respect for you. I want to go to Dee, and then we'll round up this question. So, Dee, what is your opinion on social media's impact on this?
I mean, I think it's just like anything else, right? There's pluses and minuses. I think social media is a tool. I think it all depends on how you use it, right? So if you want to go onto social media and take what you see at face value without doing the research and without, looking into what's behind the stories, I think then you're going to get what you can expect to get. I do think it has its place in amplifying voices that may not have otherwise been heard. And I think we are trying to oversimplify the movement of equity and inclusion to kind of put it into one streamline or into one fashion, when in reality, we have to look at all of it. We have to look at police brutality, and we have to look at crime that's happening in Black communities. We have to look at, you know, what we're doing to each other as well as what the systems are doing to us. And so I think, you know, for me, the impact of social media, I use it as a tool. I use it as a tool to get information, as a starting point for research. And sometimes I use it as an ending point once I've already done my research. So I think, you know, it has its place. And when we try and take it and we put it in a different place, then we end up in trouble. But at this point, I feel like it has its place. And I think we have to be very careful about oversimplifying the movement that's in front of us. And, you know, and talking about opportunity, you know, I worked really hard, and I do believe I did really well for myself. I don't know that everybody has that opportunity. I do believe if we're going to talk about systemic racism, then we have to recognize that there are systems and attributes in place that oppress people. And I don't necessarily agree that everybody can just work hard and pull themselves up by their bootstraps. I do believe that there are systemic, you know, things that are in place that do oppress people and that do keep the economy going. You know, we can look back 400 years ago when slavery was started. They didn't abolish slavery and not have an economic fashion to make up for that in the government and in the community. We would have failed as a nation if that's what they did. So I think we have to be very, very mindful of what we say, especially from sitting in the places where we're sitting. You know, I'm sitting here, I live where I live, but I make sure that I'm also getting into the community and seeing what's happening in the community. And when we start to talk about crime that happens in the community, a lot of it is a result of the oppression and we talk about images and how social media pushes images and agendas. Those images and agendas are pushed in our communities every single day, and they result in the things that, you know, people want them to result. And then we look at each other and say, why is this happening, right? So if you think social media is pushing a specific agenda, we also have to be aware that those agendas are also being pushed in real life in our communities every single day. And they're yielding an expected outcome based on what they're presented with. So I'll pause there because I know we have a lot of people left to go.
Yes, great answer. Great. I mean, you know,
I would like to ask Dee before we leave, because I thought she had a really powerful answer, but I have a question can she name 3 systematic things that cause people to do the wrong thing? Because I'd like to know, because I grew up in the hood and I didn't see any systematic.
Well, first, I think we have to draw the line between systematic and systemic, right? So systemic means this entire nation was bred into a systemic issue of racist or built on racist fibers. Slavery is systemic. It's built into the fiber. So when you say something like, okay, for example, I was talking to a colleague the other day and he's like, well, do you think that some of these white men are on good behavior because there are mixed people, there's mixed company? I said, well, define good behavior, because good behavior could be ignoring minorities in a corporate setting. I witness it every single day. That good behavior is acceptable. It's defined by social norms that were created from a racist fiber. When you talk about systemic means it's built into the system. Systematic means it's a result of the system. So when I say systemic, I mean things like education. I don't think that is any coincidence. I grew up in the hood too, but I made it to a magnet school in Philadelphia that afforded me different opportunities to be in mixed spaces and take advantage of some of the best educations in the world. My neighbors did not have that opportunity. It was 1 in 100 that were getting out of the hood to go to a school that was going to provide an education that would cause progression and allow them to build on their on that education and that network and that system to be able to survive. Not everybody had that opportunity. Systemically, the schools that are in our hoods and our communities are not the same as the schools that are in other communities. They don't even feel the same, right? And so when you look at the building, when you look at where we're sending our children into, and we're creating our schools. I'm from Philadelphia. I'm not sure where everybody else is from, but if you go into the city inside of Philadelphia, the schools feel like prisons. They don't have working bathrooms. They have police inside the school. You talk about defunding the police. Defunding the police, to me, is not about defunding it for violent offenders. It's about get the police out of the school, because I don't need my child seeing an officer every day to tell them that they need to behave. Children who are misbehaving need to be led and guided. When you have misbehavior in a white school in a suburban community, there's not a cop there that's telling that kid, you're going to go to jail or I'll arrest you. there is a teacher there is a counselor there that shows them love and shows them guidance and gets them back into the right community. When you talk about law enforcement and redlining, there's no coincidence that minority communities are policed heavier and differently than majority communities are policed. There are things that happen in my neighborhood that people can get away with, but if it happened in the neighborhood where I grew up, best believe there was not going to be. Nobody's upset that, you know, there's teenagers hanging with their bikes at the Wawa around the corner from me. The cops don't bother them. They go in and out of Wawa with no issue. If there's a store on the corner in a Black community, the cops are saying, why are you here? Why are you standing here? They make that a crime. So when you talk about systems and systemic, it's woven into the system that has been created. It's not an outcome of the system. It is inside of the system. That's what the system's based on.
Well, but is the system racist if it's ran by Black people?
The system is racist, period. The system in the United States, I don't care if it's run by Black or by white, the system that was created in the United States that is founded on 400 years of slavery is racist.
But not all Black people are slaves, though. Not all Black people are slaves, though. As a matter of fact,
all Black people didn't have to be slaves.
I come from a lineage
all
of
Black
slave
people
owners.
didn't have to be slaves. All Black people didn't have to be slaves, but the system of slavery where it says I as a person can own another person, that is racism. When you treat a Black person as a piece of property or 3/5 of a person, that is a systemic racist approach.
But what I'm saying though is I come from a lineage of Black slave owners.
You come from a lineage of, okay. So your people were oppressors. Then your people were oppressors. They can't be racist because racism, the very definition of racism says that you're in a majority position to influence power on a marginalized community. Your people, your lineage, if they're Black, cannot oppress other Black people because they're not put in a situation where they can inform the systems to be able to.
They own white slaves as well, though.
Your people own white slaves.
Yes, they did.
Okay, so if they own white slaves, did they do something that was wrong? Yes, but the majority of slaves were not white.
There wasn't a lot of slaves.
There is still white privilege.
There wasn't a lot of
white privilege.
Only a small percentage.
I just want to add something. I just want to add something, Gabriel, real quick.
Okay. Before we go, because again, I think we're going to get a little bit off point of what we're trying to do here. Because here's the thing, guys. I understand everything that we're talking about, but we're not going to be able to change what we're talking about doing here, right? I mean, what we're talking about here is what we're doing going forward. Now, I understand each and everybody's points. Each of them has a validity to it. So I want to give everybody the floor to be able to talk. JaMarr, if you want to go ahead and say something, go ahead and go ahead and say what you wanted to say before I hop into the next question.
Well, what I wanted to say was, Dee mentioned, having opportunities that others didn't have. And I think that goes across the board, right? Any school system, if it's not high quality, right? If a kid can leave that system and go to another system, that kid would have a better education, right? We can all agree with that because she went from her inner city school to a magnet school. But if you look at the Democratic Party, for example, who are supposed to be for people of color, right? They constantly prevent school choice. They've been doing it for over 35 years. Now, before police were in Black schools, how was the school system, right? Because there were no police at all times in Black schools. There was a certain point in which crime got to a certain level within and around the school. And I can attest, I went to a school without police officers, and I would have to run home if I didn't belong to a gang. So at some point, there has to be intervention. But we want to blame that intervention on systematic and systemic things versus the actual culture of those communities. I grew up in the Bronx in Spanish. Can I finish?
Hold on. Yes. Go ahead.
I grew up in the inner city where there was gangs, drugs, and violence constantly around my community. At some point, parents mostly black parents, wanted police to intercede to put a stop to this violence and this crime. And it spills into the school because guess what? People sell drugs in schools. They do prostitution in schools. All of these types of things happen in certain communities where the culture is for that activity. And so what I would like to say is I'm about solutions. If you look at Thomas Sowell, who wrote over 40 books, his last book is about charter schools and how they could benefit the black community in particular, and is full of statistics and studies and real information. But the book that changed my whole perspective was Black Rednecks and White Liberals. Please check those two books out, and it talks about how there were cultural shifts that honestly had nothing to do with slavery, had nothing to do with racism, it had everything to do with culture. And as someone who comes from a long line of family of people who were doing drugs, selling drugs, prostitutes, pimps, and hustlers, I'm trying to tell you that the cycle starts with your individual personal responsibility and your decision to be great no matter what situation is given to you. I don't care what school you go to, the choice is still within you because I did it. And one of my brothers didn't do it and he ended up in prison. But two of us went to college, two of us graduated college, one of us is a detective, one of us is an officer of 14 years, and my sister who didn't graduate high school because she chose not to, she did get her GED. And now she has a decent career, but it was choices that were made. So before we point, like I love what Christopher said, let's look at our own house. If your own house is cleaned up in process and you're working on you, there's nothing outside of you that can stop you. No system and no violence against man shall prosper if he's doing what he's supposed to do. And that's what I believe.
Okay, go ahead, Dee.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna let Dee go, then I'll let Omar speak. So go ahead.
Let Omar speak because
Okay.
I can probably go for a while. And
Okay.
then
Okay. Go ahead, Omar.
Okay, so on my end, I'm having some technical difficulties, but based on the little bit that I heard, I have to agree with some of what JaMarr said. I also grew up in a bad neighborhoods, and I also made it out. Okay, it doesn't mean that I don't know what was said before, and I'm not really taking sides. I'm just pointing out what I agree with based on what I just heard. Okay. So yes, it really depends on the individual. The individual has to literally have the right mindset and say, okay, this is what I need to accomplish with my life, and this is how I'm going to do it. And you literally have to just fight against everything else that's fighting against you. You have to lift yourself up and become great, regardless of what's going on around you. I've been in neighborhoods where people are, getting shot up or dealing with drugs or whatever it may be. That stuff has nothing to do with me because I'm not interested in that stuff. I was never interested in that stuff. I stayed away from dealing with police and etc. I made it out. Does it mean that everyone will? Does it mean that everyone did? No. But my point is that if I didn't have the right mindset, I wouldn't make it because I'm sure statistics says, some people will, be dead by a certain age, etc. I didn't let any of that faze me. I didn't. I refused to. Even to this day, I refuse to.
So I guess my question is, right, when you say you have to rise above and you have to make it out, as a Black person, I agree with you. I agree you have to.
I'm finished. If I can continue, but.
Uh-oh. I'm sorry, what'd you say? So I guess the question is, though, do we have the same perspective for white people? Do we say, do we look at white people and say, you have to have the mindset to raise above and to make it out? Because I don't see that. I live in a white neighborhood. That's not the mindset. The mindset is we nurture every single child that's available to us. When we see them go off the road, we all help them. There's not really an option. It's not about making it out. Everybody becomes successful. That's what I see in my neighborhood. So if you see something different, please, somebody speak up and let me know. It's not about. So if I as a Black person have to make sure that I don't have to watch the killing around me, and I have to have a chance to make it out, and it's a one in whatever chance. If you've got 3 siblings and 2 of you made it out and 1 didn't, so I got a 2/3 chance of making it out. then I'm okay or I'm good. But at the end of the day, that's not the mindset that America lives by. I think that in and of itself points to a system that we have to overcome.
So Dee, real quick, I was on a Zoom call today with a colleague of mine who lives in North Carolina, who's a former Marine officer of 22 years, is currently retired on disability, right? And he's building his own company. But he has a brother who's 54 years old, a white guy who's struggling with alcoholism, has for his entire life, has started drinking since he was 12 years old. And it's the same thing. Two brothers from the same household. And even with nurturing, his brother still fell down. What I'm trying to say is that struggling happens in all sides. What happens is the struggles that Black people face, it gets magnified on television. All of our struggles become something of lore, of folly. If you look at what gets projected about our communities from music, from movies, it's only the negative stuff. So what I'm going to say is that I didn't make it out on just mindset alone. I had help. I had people in my community. I had a community center leader named Gary Duggan, who was a Black man from Jamaica who looked after 40 kids as if they were his own. If it wasn't for that father figure and the many others in my community that I could be magnetized towards, I might not have made it out, right? But they helped shape the mindset. So while I do understand that there are some communities that are more nurturing and more connected and cohesive, a lot of Black communities don't tend to be that way. Some are. And what we need to do is nurture that mindset to it. It takes a village. It always has. But some of us have forgotten that. And we think, oh, it's due for self mentality. It's not. It's a tribe that helps you succeed. And that's how I made it. But I don't think that's systematic. I think that some people are individualistic and selfish, and some people think about the group. And in some cases, we don't see that as much in the Black community because of people's own individual struggles with addiction, drugs, etc., depression, you name it, PTSD, all of that stuff. It affects how cohesive we can be together.
Okay. So Dee, real quick, let me take a step back for a minute, okay? We still need to hear from Kaitlyn and Reena. I want to give them their piece to speak as well. I want this to be open after that, but I at least want them to get their chance to speak about it also. So if we could just take a step back for a moment and then allow them to share their perspectives, right? Because it's different perspectives. Let's start with Kaitlyn and do the same question as far as social media and the impact. Coming from a youth perspective, I think it's very valuable to see what, her generation and age group thinks, right? Because that's the future.
So thanks for that. First off, I just want to start off by saying thanks for having me. And I think everyone here is bringing their own unique perspectives that I really value and cherish each one. So thank you to each of you for that. But kind of on this conversation, I think I loved Christopher's point about the fact that we wouldn't be here without social media. And I think no matter what you believe, if Black Lives Matter movement is something positive or negative, ultimately it's stirring the pot and it's making people have more conversations and have more initiative to go out there and read books, watch documentaries, get educated, question within their own community. And I think that whether or not you think holistically it is a positive or negative, I think that's definitely one positive that's come out of it that I think should be honored and recognized. I know in my town, we started a kind of similar roundtable exercise within my group. We have a group called Community Conversations, which is basically built upon having meaningful conversations to enact change within ourselves and our community and create a more nurturing environment within our community, a more connected community. And I think that wouldn't have happened if it weren't for the Black Lives Matter movement and it weren't for this extra publicity on this subject. And kind of going on from that point, so I totally understand this idea of working hard and overcoming, your environment. I believe so much in kind of that mindset that no matter what you're given, there's ways to work hard and rise up. But I do think that should be noted that it's possible, absolutely, to come from the worst of places and get where you want to go. But I don't think we can ignore that people who aren't living in a place they have to escape have the privilege that they don't have to worry about escaping. They don't have to worry about getting out of the system. That is a privilege. And that is one that is built from systemic changes and from systemic forefront. So I think there are also cultural influences that influence what a person believes. And if you're coming from a place that's constantly nurturing you, constantly telling you, yes, you're going to make it to college, you're going to have a family, you're going to grow up and be able to do whatever you want, those cultural influencers make a huge difference on where you go in your life. And of course, in every environment, in every culture, if we can try and create cultural conditioning that puts leaders in the forefront, that can nurture a better environment and nurture that mindset that can, empower people, that's something that's a great solution. But I don't think we can not recognize the fact that some people come from a place of privilege where they don't have to escape the place they come from.
And Katie, I appreciate that, and thank you so much for your perspective, right? Because you're coming from a different side of this.
Yeah.
In many different ways.
Yeah.
And since everybody but Reena has had a chance to talk about this topic, I think we should continue with the question. And because Reena has a very unique perspective as well, because she's worked in, media, TV, and those types of things. And then she has her own perspective also. So I think, Reena, why don't you take the floor? And then keep in mind, this is an open place for us to have these discussions. It's a safe place to have them. And when we come to difference of opinions, it gives us the opportunity to actually listen to the other person rather than judging it based on a social media post or anything else. And it gives us and enlightens us to hear someone else's perspective. So, Reena.
Oh my God, my heart's pounding right now. This is an intense conversation. So one thing that I wanted to bring up was I made a comment on Facebook around, the Elon Musk story of going to Mars. I said, anybody ready for Mars? And I had somebody message me in my private messages saying that as a white woman, she said, white woman to white woman, I don't think you should be making jokes like that in a time like this. That was the short version of what she wrote, but about 3 more paragraphs long than that. And I feel like, I'm a mom of 4 and, I am trying my best to work and to juggle a lot and start a podcast and be a good example. And I live in Chicago too, by the way. And I worked for a court TV show where I drove all the way to 171st Street and I was the only white person going to, that neighborhood to get those stories. And I was like 8 months pregnant doing that. I just felt like that was super judgmental. I'm like, first of all, I'm Jewish. How do you even know I'm white? I'm not going to even bring that up, but like, she doesn't even know me. And if I don't put the black square on my Instagram, and if I don't talk about the shootings that are happening, and if I'm not fucking vocal like everybody else, excuse my language, like, I shouldn't be attacked for that. So I want to bring that up.
I think that's beyond valid. And I think that there's a point to be made, and that's, look, this is a very touchy subject for everyone involved in this conversation on all sides. Unless you live by pure hatred, then you just enjoy the confrontation, right? If you're not somebody who can respect another person, you're going to thrive on the hatred back and forth. If you're anybody who has a conscience and respects others and wants to hear the other side, you're going to get messed up with the different information that gets disseminated throughout media, whether it's political sides, whether it's agenda based, whether it's you're listening to certain people and that's just a message that you're going to hear. There's a big influence on who we follow and who we listen to. And I feel like if we're not representing ourselves properly and we're not listening to a diverse group of people, then we're not going to hear all the different sides. And
I want to say one more thing too. So I just started this podcast and I am interviewing people from all walks of life. And, I interviewed a KKK member who now wants to be a Jew. I interviewed murderers. I interviewed CEOs. I interviewed YouTubers. I interviewed a girl who grew up as an Orthodox Jew and then found out her husband was a sex addict. I had somebody from my own community reach out to me and say that was below me and that I shouldn't be covering those topics and I shouldn't be, fascinated by those stories. So yeah, I feel like that there's so much attacking going on, and you can't have your own voice and your own curiosity and be yourself. There's just so much attacking going on social media.
Yeah, so let's
in the DM.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go into the next question which we had lined up, which is of course about talking about the impact of the violence during these peaceful protests, right? That people are out there in the streets doing it, and what kind of effect does it have on, these protests that are happening? I mean, you see people who start out, want to go out there and have a peaceful rally, go out there and share and at least get out there and want to, I don't know, go out there and start some kind of movement, I guess. But here's the thing, it starts out peaceful and it turns violent. And that's how everything gets seen. That's how everything gets shown on media. That's how everything gets shown. That's the first thing. It's not the people that are out there. And again, it might be about, we might be talking about a different kind of crowd, but it's not always just the peaceful people that get the attention. It's everybody who does the violence. It's everybody that does the breaking the windows and breaking into, a business owner's shop. So talking about that subject there, what do you guys think about that as far as, at least going out there and protesting, even though you might not agree with Black Lives Matters?
Well, I live in an area right here near the Fairfax district in West Hollywood. So there was a peaceful protest about a half a mile away from my house. And on the day that there were the riots in my neighborhood, I didn't really know about the protest because, I wasn't planning on being near any protests, just because I know that there is a propensity for violence, not because of the peaceful protesters, because of the people who want to hijack it, right? Mm-hmm. One of the things that you have to understand, especially when let's look at the roots of Black Lives Matter. The roots of Black Lives Matter is Marxist ideology. Now, whether or not they believe Marxist ideology 100% is neither here nor there, but the founders of Black Lives Matter have said that they are trained Marxist. Now, if you don't know anything about Karl Marx, right, and here's the thing, before social media, I learned about Nazi Germany, Hitler, right, Marxist, because in high school, I had a nonprofit called Facing History and Ourselves, who is based out of Boston. They have been teaching in curriculum for over 30 years so that people could be educated on what happened in Nazi Germany so that we won't repeat the same mistakes, right? And so when you have thought police and people telling you what you can think and cannot think, that is the beginning of fascism. Now, people were saying, from the right, Trump is a fascist and things like that. But if you look at how people on the left are attacking people for having freedom of thought, that is fascist type behavior. And there's a danger in that, because if you understand who Karl Marx was, he was a man who had 3 of his 6 children die from starvation, right? Because he was an alcoholic and he was a practicing Satanist. And he came up with principles that he thought would be good for society. And over time, they caught steam and people carried those ideologies forward. So if that's the kind of ideology that undergirds Black Lives Matter, that's a serious problem, because if you have just a few radicals who show up at these rallies, they're going to decide to escalate things, to create, because they're going to say no one's going to really pay attention to us unless we make this as crazy and as violent as possible. And it's really sad, because I had a little elderly white woman, maybe 59, 60 years old, walked past me the day of the riots and asked me if I was going to be joining the peaceful protest. And I said, no. And then she kept going. And I would hate to have found out that something happened to this little old lady who only means good, but because she's being hijacked by those with really whacked out ideologies, that is not what America is about. And I just want to say this. I vehemently disagree that America was based on racist ideology. Slavery had been happening for hundreds of years before America, and they're still happening now. But what's important to know is that if the fabric of America was based on slavery, we would never be free. The fact of the matter is, the founding fathers had an ideal. They fell short of it, but America still reached for it and is getting to it and is getting better. And I don't think that we're done yet. We have a long way to go, but to ignore all the progress that we've made as a great country, to me, it's almost like you're not giving any credit for the greatness that America has done. because you don't have the exact goal point that you want, but the goal point is going to continue to move, because while you can vote, you can try to get equality, you can't ensure that everyone starts at the same point, and you damn sure can't make sure that everybody finishes at the same point. That is a lot of individuality in between that.
So I want to jump in there really quick, and I think I did a little research as you're talking, and I did come across a similar accounts that about the Marxist belief, and so I do want to honor that point. But I also want to recognize that I do think it's important to recognize that movements evolve, as well as the way you've mentioned we're not giving any credit for the great things America has done. America's evolved, and America has evolved from a place of, having slavery be such a huge part of our fabric, and it is evolving, and I think we need to honor that in a similar way that the movement of Black Lives Matter is evolving too, and it's grown much more than into something much bigger, where people adopt it as something much different than Marxism.
And I'm not going to say that it's not, but you got to look at how things start and understand that that's where the violence. The question was, what do we think about the violence happening during the peaceful protests? And what I'm trying to tell you is that people that might take that one part of that ideology, take it all the way to the nth degree, they are infiltrated. They are already within the ranks of Black Lives Matter. So while I think peaceful protest is important, whether you want to kneel or stand for the national anthem or the flag, I have fought, I have almost died for you to have that right with my 14-year career. You have to be careful about certain ideologies because they ultimately have an objective, which is to win at any cost.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's the same way you can't. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just going to say it's the same way you see as you can't put all Muslims as being radicals. You can't. That's not the ideology of what their religion is. It's the radicals who get the attention, though. It's the jihad, and it's the people that pay attention to that. I do agree with that point, but also to your point, Katie, I do believe we do evolve, though. I think that's what we're all supposed to do as a society and as people. I mean, isn't that the point? Isn't that the point of what we live our lives to? Is to evolve, to get to another level?
I think that's
go ahead.
That's totally the point. That's totally the point, right? And so the idea is that there is not a goalpost, right? The idea is that, the destiny is going to be the thing that we want to continually attain, and the image of that is going to change with different generations. So it's not an end point, it's not an end game, but it's a process, and that we're all supposed to be a part of the process. I just find it very, very interesting that we can say that, there's no systemic, when we start to talk about the coverage and that the violence is what gets the coverage on media. Why do we think that is? Why do we think that Black neighborhoods are portrayed a certain way in the media? Why is there such thing as Black on Black crime when 85% of murders that happen with white people are white on white, and yet you've never heard the term white on white crime? So when we start to talk about systemic, and when we start to talk about media, to think that, we can push agendas on social media, do we not think those same agendas are pushed on regular media, and that they're portrayed in a certain image to make people feel a certain way about the Black community? And it sounds to me, unfortunately, from listening to this call, that we're buying that. We're buying that the Black community is full of pimps and drug dealers. I mean, do we not think that some of what's happened in terms of the drugs and in terms of the community was placed there systemically because they want to paint a certain picture? I mean, I guess I just get very confused by that. So I'm guessing that Black people went and found crack and brought it into the community. That's what happened in the 80s. They found it and they brought it into the communities themselves. Is that what we're saying? Are we saying that from a media perspective, that Black people control the media and they're showing you the systems that they want to see? I don't think it's a coincidence that peaceful protests don't get covered on television. And I also believe that riots are the voice of the unheard. However, I don't think that Black people are all the people that were doing the rioting. But if you put Black people into a space or into a spot where you're consistently ignoring their needs and you're consistently ignoring what they need to make progress, and you're not founding that, and Black people continue to fight for a country that's not fighting for them. Have we made progress? I won't disagree that we've made progress. But when you look at it and you can see that police officers get off for killing an innocent Black man or Black man, I'm sorry, he had a counterfeit $20 bill, so he deserved to die over a counterfeit $20 bill. When you see a Black man that's killed over a counterfeit $20 bill and nobody's understanding the stress that Black people feel as a people, then I think that's an issue.
Who said we agree with that? I haven't found one person that agrees with the slaying of George Floyd. And it goes to my big thing is accountability. If George Floyd never went there with a counterfeit bill, would he still be alive? Would anybody have called the police on him?
So I think
would he have called the police on him? If he went in there and if he just went in there and just bought whatever he was going to buy and wasn't on crack and meth or any of that, just went and bought his stuff and left, would anybody have called the police on him? I mean, there's nobody who agrees with him being killed. It comes down to accountability. If
I think the question is different, right? Because I think the question goes when you start to look at racism and racist systems. What I tend to do is say, if a white person were in that same situation, in that same scenario, would the outcome have been exactly the same? That's what I look at. If
Tony Temple, have you heard of?
No, I'm not.
Are you aware of Tony Temple? So he was killed up in Dallas back in 2016 from a police officer kneeling on his back
for
about 11 minutes. He had mental issues and they kneeled on his back. But we don't hear about it because the narrative that the media wants to push is that we live in a racist country, which isn't true. We're no more racist today than we were in the 60s.
That's a problem. If we're no more racist,
you can't get rid of racism though. You can't legislate people to not be racist.
No, I totally agree. It has to be the behavior. That's one thing I agree with you on. It has to be the behavior, and it has to be in the heart to not be racist. It has to be in the heart to not look at a Black man and not be afraid of him because of the color of his skin or because of his size. It has to be in the heart to not feel like Black men are more dangerous.
I agree, and it also has to be in the heart of the Black men to not be attacking police officers. You know that the majority of police officers are afraid because Black men attack and kill police officers. It's a fact. It's a fact. So if they're on the edge, if a police officer is on the edge around a Black man, he's looking at the statistics saying, "Man, the last person I pulled over, it was a Black guy, and he fought with me. He punched me in the face."
So real quick, Earl, she wanted to know where the FBI crime statistics will break this down for what. In terms of who commits what crime towards what and what percentage of police officers are killed and by what types of people. So they have a logical fear for why they do fear Black men. However, what I will say though, Dee mentioned that drugs were placed in the community, and so they were placed in the community by different things. And I know the CIA's role in the drug trafficking, but when you listen to Freeway Rick Ross, who sold crack all throughout the Los Angeles area, you clearly see that it was a choice he made to go become the trafficker of these drugs. And the point is because he chose to lack off in high school and not be literate. So he was a star tennis player, but could not get a scholarship because he couldn't read and couldn't pass his SATs, right? So that's what led to his downfall. It was choices he made, and so he looked for a shortcut. Let me finish, D. So he looked for a shortcut, and he goes around the country touring and talking about the choices he made and how it had such a horrible effect. Right? At one point, he had about $200 million. Right? That was his choice. So somebody can put drugs in front of you and say, "Hey, sell these, and I'll give you money," and you can say, "Okay, well, I could do that and make this money, or I could say, you know what, that's going to lead to a negative outcome. Instead, I'm going to go pack groceries. I had that same choice. I could have sold drugs, but I decided I would do something that would not put me at risk because I respected my mother. And all my mother asked of me was that, JaMarr, I don't want you to be a bum. I don't want you to be a loser. I don't want you to end up in jail like so many of your other relatives have done so many times before. And I took her desires from me. I took it to heart, and I just made different choices. And it sounds like I'm oversimplifying it, but I promise you that I'm not, because I know how hard it was for me. I didn't have the coolest Jordans growing up. I wanted those shoes, but I knew that the shortcut would lead to bad consequences. And so many people think I can get away with it this time. And it becomes a slippery slope. And so while I do think that there have been breakdowns in our systems, the choice to sell drugs, that's a choice that people make. That's not a choice that racist systems force you to do. And that's what
Can I go back to a choice that I don't think he made? You made a point about he chose to be illiterate. Do you
No.
Do you have children? Do you have children?
I heard him interview this. Listen, I have children. I have a child, and I've been reading to her since she was alive. And so my mother did the same thing. The reason why I say he chose to be illiterate was because he had the opportunity to focus in school or be one of the cool guys in the back of the class, being a class clown. And I had done that at one point. I got left back twice before I got skipped once and graduated valedictorian. I'm trying to tell you that it's choices. I could have literally been the statistic. I was down that road, but I made a choice. And he chose to learn how to read.
Literacy is not a choice. Literacy is not a choice.
Okay. So how do people learn how to read? Okay. How do people learn how to read?
So hold on. Let her speak her point. I want to hear what she has to say.
Literacy is not a choice. Literacy, like you said, your mom read to you. I've been reading to my kids since they were in the womb. The difference between someone who is literate and someone who is illiterate has to happen between the age of their birth and the age of 5, and how many words they hear and how many words they consume. This is the reason why we have trouble in the Black community, where they're not reading to children when they're in the younger and the more formative years. So for you to say, well, he chose not to pay attention, he chose to want to be the cool kid in school. Literacy is a choice that's made long before you know even what cool is. Long before you understand whether I'm going to be cool or I'm not going to be cool. Literacy starts at home. So that can't be a choice that he made. If he was illiterate, then to me it's okay, maybe his mother and his parents may have failed him. But again, when we start to talk about systems, what systems are in place in different communities to reinforce when the parent is not there? When you come into certain communities, whether the parent is there or not, there is going to be a system that ensures that that child can make sure that they're not doing social promotion, and they're not passing children when they aren't at level. They're not passing children when they're not at par. So there is a system, there is a community that enforces literacy and that doesn't give an opportunity or a choice for you to be illiterate. So for us to say that a child chose to be illiterate, I can't even make sense of that. I can't.
No, Omar, you wanted to say something? Omar, go ahead. Unmute your mic. Let me see. Hold on. Maybe it's muted.
I think he just has a severe delay.
Yeah, he's got a.
So perhaps my point about him not being able to read was oversimplified, but his siblings could read, and so watch some interviews with him speaking and hear it from himself. It was the choices he made. It wasn't that he couldn't read at all; it's that he wasn't reading at the grade level because he wasn't choosing to focus on those activities. Now, yeah, maybe his families could have helped him on that, but that is not a systematic racism thing. That is his family not having the proper focus on what should matter to their kids. Because I'll tell you this, when slavery ended, we had the largest amount of Black people who could read. We had the biggest percentage that you could ever imagine. Black people excelled when they were told they could not read, when there was no schools for them. And so if they could do it, if people that were once slaves could learn how to read, how could somebody who has...
Let me just ask you a question about that. So how do you prove that? Statistically,
the Industrial Revolution,
huh?
It's historic proof.
Well,
look at Booker T. Washington.
The only reason I'm
reading the book about Booker T. Washington. White liberals, because it's based on statistics.
It's based on okay. So
The actual
that's what I'm
numbers are
asking.
there. The numbers are
That's
there.
That's what I'm asking because I'm just.
Yeah.
That's why
I like to give sources to the information that I get, because I'm reading this and I've been reading this for years, and it was education that I saw on my own.
Because
coming from a numbers person, you can make the numbers say whatever you want them to say. You have the numbers to fit the narrative. That you want to create. I will tell you one thing from a qualitative perspective. When I say whether he was reading behind level or whether he was not reading at all, I will tell you the difference. My children have the same parents. My older one read at a different level than my younger one. He needed additional help. Whether I was there or not, the school said, we are bringing in a reading specialist to help. Why? Because he goes to a school that has that type of support system. That support system does not exist in inner city public schools. Because he's at a private school, they are watching him. When we don't afford those same opportunities to people who are in a public school community, then we end up with these particular issues. So it's not just about the family. Again, it's about the system. Even if the family fails, there's going to be a system that steps in and picks it up. My younger son, they put him with a specialist. That's what they do. That's what systems that are invested in people being successful do. That's what they do. We don't hear about it. You don't hear about it because nobody's going to talk about their child going to a reading specialist if they're in the majority. White people are going to.
Hold on. Go ahead. Hold on, Mike. What did you want to say, Mike? Please. I see you waving your hand.
Look, I think that there's a lot of difference in opinions, and I think that this conversation could literally go on for days, right? And I feel like everybody has a different perspective with it, and everybody should respect that perspective, right? So I want something to come out of this, which is solutions. And I really would like to spend the second half of this roundtable talking about different perspectives on solutions. And what is the workaround, right? We all realize and we all acknowledge that different agendas, different people of power all have this influence, and they control the narrative most of the time, okay? Whether it's right side, whether it's left side, whether it's white, whether it's black, whether it's pink, whether it's purple, it's power versus people that are perceived to have none, right? And how do we create solutions to give everybody a chance that if they work their hardest, work their ass off, okay, that they can reach the same levels? And I understand that in current state, there's many systemic issues, there's many issues that are underlining, but as the generations move forward, there is going to be a situation occurring where now it's not going to be white versus black, it's going to be poor versus rich. It's going to be, and the gap in that inequality is getting bigger daily. And it's not going to stop anytime soon. So the question is, what can we put in place to create solutions to give everybody an equal chance moving forward before this becomes a situation like a dictatorship, communism, something to Marxism, whatever you want to call it, something to that extent, to where it's one says everybody has to listen. If they don't, then no matter what color they are, they're done, right? So what are potential solutions moving forward to increase equality?
Get rid of BLM. Get rid of it. Hold on. They're talking about they want to take me from my family. That's in there about me. They say they want to revamp the structure of the family, which doesn't include a male. And the problem with the black community is that we don't have fathers in the home, and we don't take accountability. If we bring the fathers back into the homes, the accountability would be there. I was raised with both my parents, and it's obvious. And it's obvious to me people who are not raised with both their parents. We're different people, and we have a different mindset. So when I talk about things like accountability, the people who weren't raised by both of their parents have a problem with it because they weren't taught accountability.
Well, I don't think that's always true. I know people who have problem with accountability and grew up with two parents, both parents in their households. I've seen it. I got friends that I'm connected to now who are still that way. I don't believe that.
I'm ready to talk.
Go ahead. I'm because I'm again. I don't believe that. Not in the
Okay.
least.
I'm ready
You
to
said
talk.
they grew up without a
Go ahead,
cowboy?
Omar. Go ahead, Omar.
D, I'm ready to talk. It's my turn.
Go ahead, Omar.
All right. So systematic racism exists. You can't just deny it. You can't say it doesn't exist or someone else didn't experience it. You didn't experience it, so therefore no one else experienced it. I'm not buying that. Okay. It exists. The system is set up in a way that different people have different opportunities available to them. All right. The way forward is positivity. You need to be positive. I hear a lot of negativity here in this discussion. That's not going to get us anywhere. We need to be positive. We need to work together and move forward together. If we're going to be fighting and fighting, like we call it in Jamaica, crab in a bucket, where all the crabs are in the bucket and no one's actually working together to get out, so no one's getting out. You have to work together. And as far as clear steps to move forward, we need to reform the criminal system, end predatory lending, protect voting rights. Yes, I did my research. All right. Increase public funding for independent property taxes, like literally cut that, because when property taxes are tied to the schools, how the schools are funded, how the schools are taken care of, it affects our education. It affects our children's education. It affects the future of the nation, the future of the country, future of the world, because you're basically saying that, you know what, in this neighborhood, they have more funds, they have better houses, and people pay more money in property taxes. So then it goes into the schools, and then the schools end up having better books, better resources.
But you know why that is,
then
though,
you
right?
have in the poor neighborhoods where but I'm not finished. So then the poor neighborhoods don't have as much money and they don't have as much resources available, and then you wonder why the person that finally makes it out still doesn't have a chance, because they make it out and it's like, oh, well, you know, your name sounds kind of black, or your name sounds like this, so therefore your resume is not gonna get as many hits. It's just a combination of a lot of things, and that's a system.
Can I talk now?
Thank you.
The reason why I pay more money in property taxes because I live out in the suburbs. I chose to make that decision, and I don't know if you realize, but 50% of a state budget goes to education. 50% of that budget goes to inner city and Title I schools. So what you just said is not right. I pay property taxes because I'm paying for that school that my kids are going to. Well, my kids go to private school because I made a decision to send them there. But it's not that the schools are not funded. They get the money. You're asking the wrong people the wrong questions. If you want to know where the money's at, why don't you ask the people in city council? You keep voting for the people in city council who are stealing money from you. You keep voting for the mayors who are stealing money from you. You keep voting for the school board who's stealing money from you. So why are you blaming the system when you're voting for the people in the system? You're voting for those people.
You first of all, it's not about overall money, it's about money per student. Second of all, if we want to talk about voting or if we want to talk about systemic, you can't tell me that names on a resume don't matter. My name is Dee Adeyemo. My father is Nigerian.
I've always said remove identifiers.
Excuse me, I'm not done. I'm not done. So when
you've had a long time to talk, you've been talking the majority of the time. As a matter of fact, I would love to hear from Reena or Christopher because they've been quiet. They haven't had the opportunity. I mean, you've been dominating conversation. The problem is there isn't a system of racism. There's not a system. There are racist people within a structure. There's a difference. There's a difference because if black people are running the system, how is it racist? That doesn't make any sense. If you have a black mayor, black police chief, black DA, black judges, and they're putting black ass people in jail, whose fault is that? Where's the racism in the system? Where's the racism at?
I think
so back
because there's a lot of people here that have differing opinions on that one, and I don't think it's one that's going to necessarily get changed or fixed in this conversation. So I think we should, again, I love your point of hearing from the other people here. I'd love to do that, but I think it should be focused more on solutions and not on that specific topic.
Get rid of
Look, at the end of the day, it's exactly what Katie said. We can go through this for days. We can continue to have this discussion. Just because we have different perspective doesn't mean that we can't find solutions, right? And just because we have different opinions doesn't mean that we can't unite to come up with a solution. And that's what's most important about these topics, these conversations. Having these hard conversations and respecting each other enough to be able to find solutions within them is the most important part of all these conversations. I agree with you 100%. I agree with all of you. I agree with both of you, even though you're on completely opposite sides, right? I think that there is systemic issues, but I also think that a lot of it has to do with choice. I think a lot of it has to do with mindset. I think a lot of it has to do with the no father at home. I think that there's so many different pieces to these issues. But the reality is the only solution is creating solutions, because some of these things cannot be fixed currently. They cannot be fixed during this generation. Some of these things are going to have to be fixed going forward and moving forward. So what are the next steps that we take moving forward to create some of those solutions? And
so, Mike, I think in one generation, I've already fixed the broken cycle that my father left for me. So I think that you're completely wrong when you say it can't be done in one generation, because it can be. It can be. My father was a Marine who came back from Vietnam, addicted to heroin, grew up in Queens, New York, went down south to try to get his life together, was working, was clean for a while, and then was gunned down by an associate of a friend of his trying to break up a fight, right? But in one generation, I have managed to not only be in the military for 14 years, I have my master's degree, and I'm working towards a PhD. In one generation, a lot can be done, but it takes focus. And I think what everybody might seem like we're coming from different sides, but honestly, if you think about it, what Christopher said, what Reena said, even what Dee said, even what Omar said, they all took a level of personal responsibility and took advantage of the opportunities that they had. Now, yes, I will agree. Not everybody's going to have an equal amount of opportunity. I think it's hard to try to legislate that. It's very difficult. I think the best we could hope for is, like what Dee said, hey, let's make sure that every single kid in the school systems throughout the country has the same amount based on where they live as every other kid in that city, right? Based on economics of that city. I think that's fair. Right. I think that we can ensure that we're not tying the zip code and the zoning to the funding. It should be everybody gets to share in the group economy of the school system. But I think that even when you look at that, how much time kids spend in school, 8 hours a day, ultimately, I think it's what happens. Can the parents be around to support their kids? Right. If they can't be around to influence and support their kid, I had so many friends that were latchkey kids. They had two parents, but they were working crazy to try to support them. If they can't be around, it's going to be hard because the streets are going to take a hold of them. And that's what I see far too often. And the only way you clean the streets up is by keeping that crime down and making sure that kids ain't getting wrapped up into the crime. So that, to me, that goes into the opposite of defund the police. I think we need more programs. I had an amazing community center that kept me off the street between 3 o'clock and 7, right before I went home. And that's where I got a lot of my support. And so I think we need that. But I think it's after school. Where are they spending their time? What are they being influenced with? That's why I do mentorship right now. And I think we need more mentors. We need more leaders. And so that's what I would ask for. Those are solutions that I think that are feasible and within reach.
Yeah.
It's about exposure. And the last thing I'll say is, here's one thing that's so crazy to me, because I was working since I was 12 years old under the table as a grocery bag packer, right? There was a bunch of Latino, Hispanic, South American people who were packing groceries. And one day I just figured out that if I just stood in line, grabbed a lane, I could start working. The fact that we have a minimum wage, it completely, if you're a poor minority person and without skills, why would a business owner give you a minimum wage if you can't actually give him a profit with your activity level because of your lack of skills. Minimum wage laws actually keep people unemployed, because back when there was no minimum wage, Black youth had a higher they had a higher work percentage than white teens, because employers would be happy to pay them and get them skilled up, and then they can move on to other jobs. And that data, again, there's a different economist who studied that data, right? But Thomas Sowell studied that data. Walter Williams, an economist, PhD economist out of the Philadelphia area, he studied this data, and no one wants to talk about it, but it's a dirty little secret. When you have a minimum wage, it keeps people suppressed, because it becomes a high bridge that you have to hurdle over. And if I'm a business owner, it's about making a profit, not doing charity. Business owners are in the business of profit. So if someone's taking away from your profits and not adding enough value to you, you have to say no to hiring them. And I think it's important. We need more jobs.
No, I'm very business minded, so I would agree with you on the profit side. What I'm hearing, and what I'm hearing you say is that you said when there was no minimum wage, then Black people had a higher employment rate than
Black teens. Black teenagers, white teens. Yes. Black
teenagers had a higher employment rate than white teenagers.
Yes.
If you flip that on its head, though, so are we saying that white teenagers are more skilled and deserve a higher rate? Because basically what you're saying now with the minimum wage, now that more white teens are employed than Black teens. So, I mean, that's a question of worth. And the reason, and I am speaking, Earl.
I wasn't speaking about today.
About me.
To be clear, I was speaking about the past with those stats. Today's stats, they're not listed because most teenagers don't work unless it's the summertime now because of the different summer programs.
I think if you imply more, right? More, you said more teenagers were working than more Black teenagers than white teenagers, right?
Yes.
So then the implication is that the times were better then than they are now. If we remove the minimum wage. That's not the implication. I don't want to get into an argument, but it feels like when you say that to me as somebody who is, if you wanted to call it an opposing view, it becomes a question of worth. And the reason why I think I've talked so much, and if there's other people who really want to get in on this, but I'll address Earl's point that I've dominated, is because it feels like I am the one who has the opposing view, and a lot of people are feeling the same way. And so I think if you talk about in terms of argument or in terms of what side you're on, I'm trying to level out the sides, but please don't try and silence me, because I deserve every right to share my point just as much as you do. So if I have something to say, I will say it. So I think going back to that, when we're solution focused and we're looking at what we can do, I completely agree with JaMarr that it's about employment. It's about, I still don't understand why our school systems are on a farming system or a farming schedule where the kids get out of school at 3 o'clock and most parents have to work until 5 or 6. We definitely need somebody or some systems and some structures to come in and give our kids some structure. I'm like you, JaMarr. I worked since I was 14. I went into the hairdresser, said, I'm going to wash hair after school. I also have to be careful with that. We have to have after school programs. I missed out on some of that because I was going to work. So what after school programs are available for our children to keep them busy and occupied in a fruitful and a productive way until their parents get home? I'm an advocate of stay-at-home moms where you can have that happen. I believe you can't produce better children than when the mothers are the nurturers of those children and are responsible for their learning, because we have a different aspect and we have a different expectation. I can tell you, with COVID and me being at home with my kids go to some of the best schools in the area. I still have a different level of expectation for them. That's who I am as a mom, because I want the best for them. So I completely and wholeheartedly agree that it's about systems and it's about programs and it's about equity and allowing those systems and programs to be in place in everywhere so that everybody has that opportunity. So that is something that I totally agree with you on.
So I want to say one key point, right? I agree with both of you. I think there's major issues. I think there is possible solutions. And now I want to hear Christopher and his mentorship programs, because Christopher is creating mentorship programs. I think more people need to. I don't only think it's black and white. I think that it just needs to happen in the masses. And I think that there needs to be more solutions for the masses. I think that there is an inequality between black and white, and that, yes, those communities might need it more, depending on their job, their income, who's home, who's not home, are both parents working all the time, all those socioeconomic differences. But there is solutions, and I'd like to really spend some time focusing on those. Christopher, why don't you run with it a little bit?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. First, I want to express that I've been listening intently to everyone that's been speaking. I personally couldn't be an advocate for diversity if I wouldn't appreciate the diversity of thought that's been expressed today by everyone. Whether I agree with those views or not, I was always taught, you have 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen more to what you talk. And I think I've learned a lot today from everyone. I think it begs to ask the question with as much passion as manifested on this particular panel by each and every individual. What experiences were they involved with growing up to form some of the things that you've all expressed today? Whether it's JaMarr, Earl, or Dee, or even Katie, and Reena. I think there's experiences that they come from that, unbeknownst to any of us, that we haven't experienced. So I think a big part of it is listening and picking up what you can extract, and hopefully having some type of appreciation of the magnitude of what they're conveying. For me, and there's a lot that I can identify with, coming from East Oakland, growing up in not in the best neighborhoods, having, I just gave this talk at Facebook, I just spoke at several other platforms as of late, is coming home with a man in the house that was sitting at a desk and tearing down and building up computers when I was a kid. And I say, Dad, what's the internet? My dad would go about to teach me what the internet was. And I say, Dad, what's the web? And my dad would go about teaching me what the web was. And I didn't appreciate until years down the road, looking back, how monumental that was to have a Black parent in technology living in the house. Because where I came from, there wasn't parents that were in technology. And then coming home and realizing that there was a man in the house. Because places where I come from, there wasn't a lot of dads around. And so I came to Silicon Valley with black color skin. I looked around, and obviously there wasn't a lot of people that looked like me. But a lot of what I was taught later on in my years were people that didn't look like me, that I was taught by them. And so one of the things that it dawned on me some months ago, even this year in this time of COVID, was with all that I've become in business, I'm international national speaker. I've advised corporations across the country, around the world. I've been afforded a lot of opportunity, and that's by grace and mercy. I grew up in a house where we're a military family. We also found ourselves in not too convenient areas and locations of cities that a lot of people don't want to be at. But I wanted to create what's called the Black Technology Mentorship Program, and I heard a lot of people express that with the need for mentorship and education. Per what Mike has inspired us to consider, what are the solutions in the second half that we're afforded to express. And so I put a program out there, vulnerable and not knowing what would happen, who would receive it, how would my friends that are white, and how would a lot of my followers that are law enforcement, how are people that, maybe protesters, how would they all look at this program that I put out there? And in the short few months, we've had well over 100 mentors or technologists that look like me and don't look like me, who in a million years I never would have thought that would answer the call to work. And we haven't gone public with it yet completely, but we now have over thousands of mentees that have signed up. People that look like me, that come from areas and neighborhoods where I come from, around the country and around the world. And so I know there's a lot of things that are expressed on the front lines, and there's protesters. I'm personally not a protester, but I'm certainly not one that's against people that do. Everyone has a role to play. They must be allowed to play them. And I'll say this too, that I am grateful to live in a country where we're able to express the things that we've expressed today. A lot of people couldn't say the things we said in a lot of countries, in different worlds. I'm grateful not to live in a country where I don't have bombs bursting in my backyard. So when I think about what we're able to express and help, I see each and every person on this panel that could be a mentor, and I wouldn't have a problem with anyone speaking to our mentees. And with us, Earl and JaMarr and Dee, I know there may seem a lot of daylight in between and a lot of dichotomy of differences, but at the end of the day, you're both, all of you are capable of eloquently speaking how you feel, number one. And two, I believe that each and every one of you at the end of the day want better for people. The two paths, the past may be different on how we go about doing that, but am I hearing anyone that says hate people? What I hear from people is people want to care for one another, no matter how the passion is manifested, no matter how we necessarily agree about that, because we're not going to agree, and nor should we, based on the experiences that I have observed in the military for 14 years. Earl said he has a family. I don't have a family yet. I may one day. I don't know what it's like to be a dad. I've never experienced philoprogenitiveness, the instinctive love that a parent has for their offspring. I don't know what that's like. I have a spiritual father. Both my physical parents have departed. But I know that I've been given an opportunity to help bring people together, provide some solution, teach and educate, and having the community. I believe someone used the analogy of the village, of having a community of bringing people together from all different kinds of backgrounds and teach our students, our mentees, and let them decide what's right or wrong. Let them decide what's best for them, but no matter who's expressing that. You know, as far as our ideological differences and things of that nature, that's going to be. You're not going to change the hearts and minds of man. You're not going to change what we perceive as evil. That's not my role. That's not my responsibility. I didn't have the capability of changing my own heart and mind. So what makes me think that I can change the hearts and minds of other people? And so when everything's said and done, I'm considering all the words that have been expressed now. And there's a lot of emotion that's fortified on it. And a lot of downcasting and kicking other people's like, look, I've got no dogs in that fight. So what I'm asking is for each and every one of you to consider in your heart and mind to join the Black Technology Mentorship Program and to become a mentor. And it may only cost you 1 hour out of a whole year to sit and talk to hundreds, if not thousands of students and people and adults that may want to hear some things of your perspective on what may help them to get down the road. Because I know one thing's for sure, somebody at some point helped you and get in the right direction, to point you in the right way. And there's not a single person on this panel that can't say that. Somebody at some point down the road helped show them the right way. And so I look at it as if I had a Reena or JaMarr, I said, hey, Mr. JaMarr, I need help with this. I just need to go down the right way. I'll carry my own bag and go the way, but can you show me the right way, which direction to go, Katie? You know, Earl, I hear a lot of the things you say, but I'm just trying to have a better sense of, is this the right way to go? Or that there's two splits in the road. There's a bifurcation I'm at. Where do I go? Now through servant leadership, now we have no excuse not to manifest this energy. Because if all you're doing is talking and not manifesting that, then everything you're saying to me is suspect. If all I heard today was people talking and not getting off this and doing something about it, I don't believe you. Whether I agree with your views or not, if you're not doing something about it, manifesting that, okay. So that's where I'm at. We launched a technology platform, bringing people together. And look, a lot of those people don't agree with each other too. Those mentors are like, you would never see them in the same room. And that's okay. But for the sustainability and the opportunities to be able to create jobs, economic autonomy, you know, I'm no longer satisfied with people that look like me that get a job at Google and Apple. I'll be more satisfied with people that look like me build the next Google and Apple. And I think we have all the tools and the autonomy and the opportunity, right? So Miss Dee, your words aren't lost on me. Brother Earl, Your words aren't lost on me. JaMarr and Reena, Katie and Omar, Mike and Gabriel, they're not. And we all have different, believe me, we have different perspectives and different understandings. But for me, it's spiritually, it's grace and mercy. And had I not had that, I wouldn't be on this conference call with all of you. So I hope we certainly have the opportunity, afforded the opportunity to build together at some point, beyond having this discussion that we're afforded to have. And I hope something that I said made sense.
So, Gabe, let me say something real quick. Okay, I dropped the ball on it, Christopher. I'm in 100%. I will make sure that I get back to you this time. I dropped the ball last time. I got mixed up in the juggling that I'm doing, but it will not get dropped again, and I'm in. 100%, I am in. My perspective is definitely different than most because I put myself in bad situations. I made horrible choices. I made horrible decisions. I decided to go to the bad neighborhoods and make bad decisions. I decided to put myself in positions with people that were considered whatever you want to call it, right? Like in just worse socioeconomic positions, right? Whether they were white, black, Hispanic, Haitian, no matter what they are, where they were from, they were just in worse situations. And I put myself in those positions and I went through that on my own and I made choices away from having both parents at home at all times. And I didn't care that they were there. I still made the bad decisions. I got myself out of it in a lot of ways. And I'm only alive because whatever my higher power, God, whatever my religion is, that's the only reason I'm here. So I will do whatever it takes to make sure that I get back to you this time, and I will not drop the ball again, and I'm in 100%.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that.
Yeah, let Reena run.
Oh my gosh, I took so much notes throughout this entire call. The one thing that really stood out that you said was that you love talking to people who don't look like you. And I really try to have conversations with people from all walks of life all the time. And I have a curiosity to ask about what their life was like. And you were talking about that too in the beginning. You said, share your experience because we've all had different experiences. So a little bit about me, I grew up a Jew in Kentucky where they totally did not know what to make of me. And it wasn't that long ago. It was like 40 years. But it was very black and white. And, people ask me all the time, what are you? Like, are you Hispanic? Are you Bohemian? Are you? And I think that still really goes on a lot today. But who helped me out was my daddy. And that's why, Earl mentioned that, he feels very fortunate to have like both parents in the home. I do think that made a tremendous difference for me. My husband comes from a broken home and he's 46 years old and it still affects him today. So I do think having two parents in a home gives you less hurdles to overcome and a much more stable home. And as far as solutions, I was thinking about that. I mean, I was working full time up until COVID, and then I dropped down to part-time and then nights because my husband is working during the day and I had to be there for our 4 kids that were homeschooling. And I think that it really does start in our own homes. It starts with the example that we give to our own kids. And if you can make a difference in one person's life, that has a ripple effect. I had a friend who lost her job and she had a love for teaching children reading. And so I hired her as a tutor for my 2 middle children. And then I recommended her on my Facebook page and got her 11 more clients. She said that I changed her entire business in 1 week. Just helping one person, and try to do that every day or once a week. And that makes a tremendous difference and it builds a community. So I think that we all can build communities, and I'm so happy to know, Christopher, about the community that you're building. And I think it's an amazing thing. I would love to be a part of it. So if each one of us built a community with a couple hundred of our friends, imagine what that could do. That's the only solution I can think of.
So I just want to piggyback off of what Reena said. Over the Covenant House, I've been volunteering there for 7 years since I moved to Los Angeles. And started off just mentoring kids in the music program, and then 3 years into that opportunity, someone asked me if I was going to do the Sleep Out. The Sleep Out is an event where it happens actually in 83 locations in 24 countries, where we sleep outside in solidarity to raise money for the homeless kids in those particular areas. We had a difficult time because COVID hit during this march for the junior executive Sleep Out, but we still managed to raise $175,000 over the course of 2 months. Last year, we did about $185,000. So when it comes to mentoring, I live that life, because one of my mentors once told me that don't wait until you think you've made it in order to start giving back. Start now, because there's always someone who's just one step behind you. So the title of my 2018 TED Talk was called Mentors or Lighthouses. And I lay out the path of how I made it to where I'm at today. It has, like you said, grace and mercy, nothing but grace and mercy. People seeing a light inside me and saying, I'm not going to let that light dimmer. I'm going to help you create more abundance and more brightness all around you. So I'm a big believer in giving back. And like you said, whether they're teenagers, whether they're, college students, or even grown men, everybody needs, the right connection. And so, I wrote a book called Super Connecting, and it's the art and science of creating meaningful relationships in a digital age. And it's never been more timely than now. It's about connecting with people and going deep. So when I meet people virtually, I say, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's have a phone call. Let's have a virtual coffee, and let's learn about one another so that we can see how we can serve one another. So Christopher, I'm with you wholeheartedly on that. And Dee, I don't think that we're that far apart. I think we're closer than what people might have heard our opinions being expressed. But what I want to say is that I'm proud of everything you've done. I'm proud of your ability to be in a loving relationship. I'm proud of your ability to have kids that you're raising and giving love, because those are the things that I wish I had when I was a kid. And so I know that your kids are going to be a shining example of the power of family, of community. And obviously, if we could help spread that to every family, that's what's going to help people be as successful as humanly possible. And that will dismantle the system from the inside out. And that's my opinion.
And I just want to put a spotlight on kind of what's
what
happening.
a wonderful way.
Go ahead. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Katie. Go ahead. Go right ahead.
So I just want to put a spotlight on kind of the shift in conversation and what's happening here. We started out, and obviously there's a clash in opinions, and I think that's a really good thing, because we need to have that diversity and inclusion and different, conversations and different opinions. But I think the important thing here, and I want to give a props to Christopher for really enacting the shift, is we had to return to love. And I think that's really important. And I think in every conversation that may get heated, every conversation that may include differing opinions, what we need to do is recognize each other's individual humanity and return to love. And I think that's something we've done today. And I think that's something we can take with us for many conversations to come. And I think it's just something to be celebrated today as we win in our conversation. And again, a learning experience for every conversation going forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Earl, I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely an interesting conversation. Again, I'm not changing my views with accountability. I'm big on that. I learned that not only growing up in my household, but also being in the military, and one of the biggest things my father taught me was don't embarrass his name, and that's the only thing I have. We all have our names, and, our names are given to us by our parents, and people are going to, they're going to associate what we're doing with our names and our parents and how we were raised, so when I see, kids out there acting up, I question the parents. The purpose of the school system, when the child goes to school, the teacher should be able to just reiterate what's being taught at home, because the house is the first place for education. Now I know that because my wife's a teacher, and she started her career in a Title I school. So I got to see parents not involved. I got to see parents coming in there, and the schools, they're receiving all the funding in those Title I schools. And I'm watching parents drive up in brand new Mercedes, getting out of the car in Jordans, and their kids can't spell their names, and they're in 3rd and 4th grade. But guess what? Those kids just get moved along to the next grade. And then being on the other end of the spectrum, and she's in a nicer school, and the parents are overly involved, and we're coming out of pocket paying for stuff. We're having to buy our own supplies for the kids in those schools that are supposedly better and getting all the money and things like that. But nobody wants to talk about that. You know, we only want to look at rich versus poor, you know, and again, we're not talking to the right people. We keep voting the same people in, and I'm keep hitting on that because it's important. Since the 60s, we've been voting, you know, Black people have been voting Democrat, and they've been doing nothing but tearing our communities down. Fathers have been systematically removed from the household, and we've done nothing to put them back in the household at all. Period. And it's time that we make that change. And I don't agree with organizations that specifically say they want to remove fathers from the household, knowing how detrimental it is to our community. It's not a good look. And I know because I try to get involved in it, and I was told those things by the leaders. So when I'm trying to highlight things that are going on, and I'm told, oh, we're not worried about that right now. We're focused on police brutality. That happens just as much as somebody getting struck by lightning. I can't get down with that. Okay. I'm seeing people slaughtered in the streets.
Well, let me ask you, because again, we're talking about solutions. So again, like Christopher was saying about mentorship, how can you go out there and change that?
I'm getting involved in politics.
Let me ask you, because
I'm getting involved in politics. That's it. That's the biggest way I can get involved is get involved in politics. That's it. When I go out and I talk to people, because I'm a conservative and I'm an independent.
Okay.
And when I go out there and I have conversations with people, only white people are Republicans, or only white people do this, because you don't understand policy.
Well, again, that's not true. I understand. I was a Republican. I read William H. Buckley. I agree with you on a lot of things. I'm just asking about action and what are some of the things that you, again, politics is one of them. That's cool.
Yeah, going out politics, letting people understand. I'm going out and I'm helping people understand how politics works, because it's not at a presidential level that polices our communities. These are changes that we have the ability to make these changes every 2 years. We can pick the judges, we can pick the DAs, we can pick police chiefs, we can pick the mayors, but we don't. Look at what's happening in Chicago. My wife's family is from Chicago. They've been voting the same way for years. And when I go there and I talk to people and I say, hey, you know, if you change this, and this, other situations are going to change. Oh, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. So, I mean, it's a constant struggle just to educate people. But we have to get past all this nonsense that's being peddled on social media and you know, through the media in general. We need to get rid of it. We need people to actually think for themselves, and that's what I do. I challenge people's thinking. Wherever I go, I'm a challenger thinking.
Okay, I love that. I like that. That's part about it. So, Dee, let's go ahead and go to you. I would love to hear what you have to say.
Okay, I think Omar was trying to, but it looks like he's disconnecting too. Yeah. So again, I want to thank for the platform and really, you know, give major kudos to Chris, because I do think he's accountable for the shift. And I thank you for kind of just, you know, highlighting the grace and the mercy. I definitely know that regardless of my opportunities and what I've been afforded, it was nothing but favor that kind of got me through and got me there, because, you know, there are people who started off with me and they're definitely not there. So thank you for the recentering. I really do appreciate that. For me, you know, and another thing I'll piggyback on that you said earlier, it's really about the inside out. So for me, I'm looking at the situations and the spaces where I'm involved. Again, I am, you know, at an executive level in a Fortune 100 company. You don't see many Black women in those positions. And so having the opportunity to talk to leaders and say, listen, this is what we need from an equity, diversity, and inclusion perspective. Are we looking at pay grades? Are we looking at our recruiting methods? Are we looking at our cultures to make sure that we're attractive to minorities? Because our retention rate for minorities, whether we like it or not, is not where it needs to be. And so started that kind of counsel and those types of conversations within, the community for our particular organization. Also work with an MBA cohort to kind of just create the pledge, because I think a lot of companies are going out and saying what they're going to do for the minority community, whether it's pledging money or pledging resources. And a lot of the companies are jumping on the bandwagon because I feel like it's popular and it's new and it's the thing to do right now. But we're also measuring the metrics and the outcomes of what they're going to do over the course of the next year, because money changes things, right? And so if corporations are getting behind diversification and equity and inclusion, then we can expect to see some things change. If they don't, if they're empty promises, then we won't see things change. And so I think that's super important. From an outreach perspective, I've always been a big proponent of mentorship. So for both of the schools that I went to from equity and inclusion, they've already delivered councils, and I'm active in those councils to make sure that we're working with the school administration to make sure that we are still seeing the types of diversity that we are supposed to be seeing. When I grew up through those schools, there was diversity. Those numbers have been dropping off drastically over the course of the last 10 years. And it has, I think, a lot to do with the gentrification that's happened in the Philadelphia area. So just being an alumnus that is responsible for, making sure that they are holding and giving that opportunity to minority students, as the minority student numbers don't continue to drop, as well as the councils at my children's private schools, again, mainline private schools that don't always encourage diversity and inclusion. So having those conversations with allies and making sure that they understand what the minority experience is like, so that the next generation that comes after me has the opportunity to do the things that I did do, but in a different way, and not experience some of the discrimination and the feelings that I did experience. So that's where I am with it. And JaMarr, I appreciate kind of your shout out. I agree. I think we're closer than we think. Would love to kind of continue the conversation offline and just make sure, we promote progress, because that's what it's all about.
Exactly, 100%. And I would love to hear from Omar too, but it seems like our friend there is having a little bit of technical issues. But, to everybody's point here, right? Again, I think everybody here, I think you said it best, Christopher. I don't hear everybody saying, I hate here, right? I don't think I hear that. I think I hear people that, again, yes, we have difference of opinions. I think we all, at some point, want to take that different path. Again, like you said, Christopher, you said it very eloquently, man. It's the way that we're headed, the way that we get there. It might be different, but I think we all want progress. Progress comes in different ways, shapes, and forms, just like each one of us here, right? I mean, none of us look the same. None of us are the same exact person. None of us have the same exact experiences, yet here we are. Here we are having a conversation about this. Here we are talking about these things. Here we are opening up and sharing each other's opinions, ideas, and even solutions. And again, each one of us is going to have a different path. And I again want to express my gratitude for each one of you for sharing that and putting yourself out there, and because this is not the easiest conversation to have. It's not very easy to open up and say the things that you want to say, because a lot of people might be judged. You might be open for judgment. People might not believe what you want to believe. I'm glad that JaMarr and Earl believe what they believe. That's the beautiful part of what we are as a country. It's a beautiful part. Each one of you, what each one of you believes. That's the most wonderful thing about what I get to wake up to every morning. Every morning we get this, and I feel again, grace and mercy. Serve. I mean, it's all wonderful things that is you express, Christopher. And again, thank you so much for changing just what you shared and what you said with everybody. So, Mr. Mike, would you like to say anything else? I'm trying to see if I can give enough time for Mr. Omar to show up.
Yeah, I'll see if I can ramble for a little bit, because I'm good at that.
Yeah.
Look, one of the reasons that we wanted to do this in the first place was to give an honest, open forum for all perspectives to be heard. And no matter how we agreed, disagreed, no matter what it was tonight, a few things happened. Everybody got a chance to be heard. Everybody got a chance to voice their own opinion. And every single person got a chance to come together and rally together for potential solutions. And that is the magic of having conversations. That is the beautiful thing about being able to open a forum where everybody feels comfortable to have these discussions. The reality is, no matter how Earl's opinions differ from Dee's opinions, that's not the point. The point is that Earl was silenced and censored, right? The point is that they shut him down because of his opinion. The point is that they are taking his voice away because people don't agree with it, rather than learning from it and trying to understand where he's coming from. And I don't care what's going on, and I don't care how different his opinion is. That's wrong. I don't care if he's white, black, purple, pink, green. None of that stuff matters. What matters is that being silenced is not right. If we truly live in this country and we truly stand by what we were created for and what the ideals were, then silencing and censoring is not the answer. Getting rid of TikTok is not the answer. Tearing people away from their opinions is not the answer. Rallying together, sharing our difference of opinions, and being able to voice them in a safe space is the whole purpose. And see, I rambled long enough for Omar to come back. See how great this was?
Omar to come back. Omar. So, closing thoughts, Omar. I would love to hear what you have to say about, what everybody's been saying about the possible solutions and what you have to say. I want to hear your opinion. Oh, come on, baby. Workforce.
Looks like Omar's views got him on timeout.
Oh, the technical part. Omar, the floor is yours, my friend. You can say whatever you want, brother.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. Thanks for your.
Oh. Oh.
Okay.
This is the challenging part of live, right? You just don't know what's going to happen.
Thank you guys for your patience. Thank you for this opportunity. Oh, the mic is on. All right. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to share the space with you guys and just share ideas. Yeah, good. So, can you hear me? You hear me, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Keep going.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
My motto, I'll start off with the motto just in case we get cut off. My motto is this: invent, change the world. So first you think, okay? Then you have to believe that you can do what you need to learn in order to get it done. The same wheel is pointless. The world to be changed for them. But for those who are all ears and open to have open minds and are eager to learn, help them. This is what I do. I didn't get to go into any of the details on any of this because none of the questions were related to it. Are there any of the answers anyway? But what I'm doing behind the scenes is, like I said, I created some recruiters and candidates to come together. And people from around the world, they say, "Oh, well, not because we can."
Oh. All right, folks.
Hey, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. Gabriel, Mike, thanks for the invitation. Reena, Christopher, Katie, Dee, Earl, it was amazing sharing this time with you guys. I can't wait to actually send the replay to a bunch of folks that I know of. And I've got to get to another engagement, but this was a blast. I had a fun time, and I look forward to connecting with you all further.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, JaMarr, for taking your time. I would love to connect with you and Earl. I would love to hear more from both of you guys, Reena as well. Christopher, wonderful thing. I would love to have a conversation with each one of you. Dee, thank you so much. You've brought so much to the table. Everybody here, I want to say thank you so much. I've been blessed to have the opportunity. Mike, you know how much I love you. Thank you so much, my friend, for helping me put these things together. It would not be possible without you. And, of course, a shout out to Annie Lee for doing what she does as well to help formulate, put these these roundtables together, guys. So much comes out of it. I learned so much from them every single time, and I'm blessed to get to know each and every single one of you going forward. So thank you so much. Mike, you got anything else to say before we get out of here, my friend?
No, I think we did a good job of saying everything that needed to be said tonight.
It was a wonderful roundtable, and each one of you, thank you so much for expressing your views and your opinions. And Earl, I'm like with Mike, I don't agree you should be blanked out. I'm glad that I got to get you on LinkedIn Live. So you do get to have the last laugh a little bit. You get to share your opinion tonight. And anytime you want to come on and use this forum, my friend, I'm offering it up to you, okay?
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And it's good to be back. And I don't mind people disagreeing with me. I wore the uniform. I wore the uniform. So people have the right. They just need to learn to appreciate it. Learn to appreciate it a lot more. And it works both ways. Conversations go two ways. It's not a highway and a bike path. That's not how it works. So. I just want better, not only for my people, but for my country as well. It's the best country in the planet, period.
Yes, it is. I won't disagree with you there. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Dee. Thank you, Earl. Katie, thank you for coming back. Always appreciate you. Christopher, it was, again, love what you said, my friend. That was awesome. Reena, I look forward to hearing more of your podcast. And, of course, Mr. Padurano, thank you so much, my friend, for being a part of these guys. Thank you, everybody who's been a part of this one. Always all the gratitude in the world. Hey, Sid, how are you doing? Wonderful. And, again, thank you for bringing a little bit of light into the world, my friend. I love that. Thank you so much. It's all about family. It's all about us being here. It's all about sharing this wonderful world. Thank you, everybody, so much. Everybody who's been a part of this one, thank you so much. Good night, everybody. I will see you again Thursday evening, 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, guys. I know that sounds weird, but I won't be back for another 3 days. I'm going to enjoy it. Thank you, guys. Have a good evening. Bye-bye. Stay safe, everybody.